Have you ever wondered why a man remembers the woman who walked away, not with bitterness, but with a haunting ache in the depths of his soul? Not the one who screamed, not the one who begged, not even the one who shattered everything in fury, but the one who, in the quietest of silences, simply withdrew, without announcement, without closure, without rage, the woman who no longer offered her energy, and became, by her absence, his deepest, most enduring wound. Carl Jung once wrote that what you resist persists, and nothing persists in a man's psyche like the imprint of a woman who once gave him her sacred attention, only to retrieve it like a queen reclaiming her throne, not as punishment, not to manipulate, but as the inevitable result of his inability to meet her in the depths where her soul lived. Some women hold the archetype of the nurturer, the muse, the healer. She gives, she feeds, she sees, she touches with more than her hands, with her spirit, and when she loves with a fullness that scares men who have not yet faced their own darkness. To be truly seen by such a woman is to be exposed, not for what you present to the world, but for what you've hidden, even from yourself. He doesn't realize it at first. He may even feel a sense of superiority when she finally steps back. He might tell himself she was too much, too emotional, too intense. He'll scroll through a parade of shallow replacements, each one more palatable, less demanding, easier to handle. But something in him, primal, unconscious, will start to hunger, not for her body, for her presence, for her essence. And the absence of that essence will grow louder with time. Because when a woman like that withdraws, she does not leave a void. She leaves an echo. And that echo haunts. You see, most men are not taught to hold the emotional weight a deeply feminine soul brings. They've been conditioned to chase achievement over intimacy, dominance over vulnerability, validation over reflection. But a high-energy, emotionally attuned woman, she speaks the language of depth. She carries both chaos and order, both the nurturing mother and the fierce destroyer. She doesn't just speak, she transmits. To receive her is to face yourself, and many men are not ready. So when she begins to sense the resistance, the walls, the ego, the avoidance, she offers grace, she waits, she communicates, she holds back her full storm. But when her warnings go unheeded, when her intuition is silenced, when she realizes that her emotional labor is falling into a well with no echo, something ancient in her shifts. She pulls back. She no longer gives freely. She no longer waits at the emotional doorway, hoping he'll turn the handle. Her energy collapses inward, and in that inward turning, she reclaims her sovereignty, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And this is what wounds him, not the loss of her body, but the loss of the mirror, because her energy reflected not just his light, but his shadow. She was the rare one who saw the boy behind the bravado, the pain behind the performance. And now, he must sit with himself, and he is not equipped, because her gaze was the only place he ever truly felt real. The feminine withdrawal is not just an act, it is an initiation. For both, for her, it is the beginning of individuation. The sacred return to her own soul, after being lost in the illusion that her love could heal what he refused to touch. For him, it's the beginning of confrontation, the fall from illusion, the agony of unmet potential, the confrontation with the anima, his inner feminine, who now rises like a ghost in her image, asking, "Why did you abandon the one who saw you?" Jung spoke of the anima as the bridge to a man's unconscious, the feminine force inside him that guides him toward wholeness. But if he avoids her, represses her, denies her, she doesn't disappear. She transforms into projection, obsession. The withdrawn woman becomes a symbol, not just of her, but of what he lost within himself. And in every sleepless night, in every silent morning, in every attempt to replace her with a facsimile, that symbol grows stronger. He cannot name it, but he feels it. It's the ache of unintegrated potential, the ache of knowing he was once offered the holy grail of emotional intimacy, and chose comfort over courage. And you, if you are the woman who walked away, know this. It was never weakness that made you leave. It was power, the power of discernment, the power of boundaries, the power of finally understanding that your energy is sacred, and not everyone is meant to hold it, because not all men are ready for the medicine you carry. To the untrained eye, her withdrawal might look passive. It may seem like silence, resignation, or emotional distance. But to those who understand the sacred dance between the feminine and the masculine, it is something far more profound. It is an energetic severance, a ritual act of self-preservation through sovereignty. This is not the same as giving up. No, giving up comes from despair. Withdrawing comes from clarity. A woman doesn't withdraw because she is weak. She withdraws because she is finally strong enough to stop abandoning herself. What a man feels when she's gone is not just loneliness. It's not just regret. What he feels is the sharp sting of a psychic wound, a rupture in the web of archetypal energy that once held him afloat. Her energy nourished him in places he didn't even know were starving. Her gaze, her intuition, her emotional range. It reached into the caverns of his being and whispered truths he wasn't ready to hear. And when that disappears, what remains is not silence. What remains is himself. In the void, his ego panics. The part of him that once fed on her constant emotional availability, the affirming texts, the nurturing voice, the gentle forgiveness, now finds itself in the wilderness, alone, naked, vulnerable. This is where most men turn toward distraction, shallow validation, escapism, anything to avoid facing the real question that now burns at the back of their mind. Why wasn't I able to hold her? This question is dangerous, because it forces the masculine to come face to face with his own unconscious, his avoidance, his unhealed boyhood wounds, his false sense of control. Jung taught that the psyche doesn't evolve through comfort, but through conflict, and this, the loss of a conscious woman, is one of the most potent conflicts a man will ever face. Because she did not leave like the others. She did not slam doors or cast blame. She left the way ancient priestesses left temples desecrated by unworthy kings. Quietly, fully, divinely. He may search for her in other faces, other bodies, other voices, but the feminine soul cannot be copied. It cannot be mimicked, and he will learn this the hard way. Each substitute will feel like a ghost of what was, a shadow, a mirage, and eventually he will come to realize it was not her love that wounded him, it was his inability to receive it. The tragedy lies in this. The masculine often awakens only through loss, and that is the sacred paradox of the feminine. She offers everything, not to be worshipped, but to be met, not to be saved, but to be seen. And when she realizes she is speaking a language the other refuses to learn, she does not fight. She fades. She becomes the mystery that once opened to him, and now closes like a flower to the cold. To the woman who has withdrawn, know this: you were not too much. You were never too emotional, too intense, too complicated. You were simply awake. And it takes a rare kind of man, one doing his own shadow work, one brave enough to hold the mirror to his own psyche, to meet a woman like you without shrinking. If he could not meet you in your depth, it is not a reflection of your unworthiness. It is a reflection of his unreadiness. And to the man now sitting in that echoing silence, this is your initiation. The grief you feel is not just for her. It is for the parts of yourself you never brought to the table, the depth you refused to swim in, the mirror you turned away from. Her withdrawal is the medicine your ego didn't ask for, but your soul desperately needed. Now the journey begins. Not to win her back, not to chase her down, but to become the man who could have held her. And should you rise from the ruins, not through manipulation, not through performance, but through transformation, then perhaps, one day you will find her again, not where you left her, but somewhere far ahead, walking in power, no longer needing to be chosen, because she already chose herself. There is a particular kind of feminine presence that does not beg, does not plead, does not chase. When she loves, she does so fully, not with desperation, but with divine intention. And when she pulls her energy back, it is not to punish, it is to protect something far more sacred, her essence. This is the part of her that carries the archetype of the high priestess, intuitive, mysterious, unapologetically whole. She lives not to complete a man but to reflect back to him the parts he has disowned. And that reflection, if he is not ready, burns, because it reveals all he has yet to claim within himself. You may think it is her love you miss, but look closer. What haunts you is what she awakened. The moment she poured herself into you, not just her affection, but her emotional intelligence, her spiritual awareness, her sacred rage. She disrupted your illusion. She held you not just in her arms, but in her knowing. And if you weren't ready to be seen, that knowing felt like exposure. And so you distanced. You dismissed her concerns. You made light of her intuition. You called her too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. But now that she is gone, now that her voice no longer echoes through your days, now that her presence no longer stabilizes your inner chaos, what remains is the bitter truth. You lost her not because she was too much, but because you were not enough of yourself. This is not a condemnation, it is a call. Because the masculine is not meant to remain shallow, distracted, fragmented. The masculine, in his highest form, is meant to penetrate illusion, to hold space, to create safety, to witness without fear. But in a world that rewards emotional detachment and punishes vulnerability, very few men ever learn how. Jung believed that within every man is an inner feminine, the anima, who longs to be reunited with the masculine psyche. But this reunion cannot occur through conquest. It only occurs through surrender, to feeling, to truth, to the often painful unraveling of everything he thought he was. So when a woman withdraws, what is truly happening is this: she removes the mirror, and with it, she removes the only light that was illuminating his unconscious. And now, alone, he is left with shadows. But this is the path. No transformation occurs in the comfort of certainty. The Stoics taught that suffering is not the enemy, it is the catalyst. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Her absence is not an outside event to fix. It is an invitation inward, to the woman walking away. Do not look back for permission. Do not question your value just because he couldn't grasp it. Some men are still boys, terrified of the ocean while craving its depth. You are the ocean. You are not meant to be held in shallow hands. And to the man waking up to what he's lost, if you are wise, you will not numb this ache. You will honor it. You will let it carve you open, not to destroy, but to excavate. Beneath the rubble of ego, beneath the armor of pride, there lies the tender boy, unhealed, unheard, unseen. He is the one who feared her love. He is the one who pushed her away. Meet him, hold him, do the work she could never do for you. Because until you integrate your own shadow, until you meet the feminine within yourself, you will continue to seek her in others, only to sabotage what you find. Every conscious woman you encounter will feel threatening, too intense, too emotional. Not because she is, but because she is showing you the places you still reject within yourself, and she will not stay. Because evolved women no longer water dead soil. They no longer play therapist to emotionally avoidant men. They do not trade their intuition for comfort, or their vision for approval. They will not shrink to fit inside the small containers men build, when they fear their own depth. The woman who walks away is not your wound. She is your mirror. She is the one who loved you with enough clarity to know that staying would mean abandoning herself. And that kind of woman, the one who no longer bleeds for those unwilling to heal, is the woman who changes men, not through force, but through absence. Absence, you see, is not emptiness, it is presence retracted, and that absence, that ache, it is not her punishment, it is your soul, remembering what you lost. Her absence is not quiet. It roars in the places you once silenced her. It echoes through the corridors of your psyche like a storm that refuses to pass. You cannot escape it. Not through distractions, not through another woman, not through work or success or pride. Because this wound, the one her departure carved into your spirit, it isn't on the surface, it lives in the basement of your soul. The woman who withdraws her energy becomes the wound that forces a man to confront himself. She is no longer accessible. Not because she's cruel, but because her soul has outgrown the place where she had to beg to be understood. And here's the truth. The feminine is not meant to explain herself. She feels, she knows. And that knowing, that instinctual, embodied, spiritual knowing, is terrifying to a man who is still ruled by his rational mind and unexamined traumas. When she stops offering her insight, her emotion, her care, it is not silence. It is sacred separation. It is a withdrawal into self. And what remains is a vacuum so palpable it feels like spiritual death to the one left behind. Not because she made him dependent, but because her energy was medicine. And like all medicine, it only heals if the body is open to receive it. He wasn't, and now he chokes on the realization. She wasn't asking too much, she was asking for reciprocity. You see, the conscious feminine is not afraid to love deeply, but she will not continue to love into a void. She will not overextend for a man who meets her emotions with apathy. She will not break herself trying to patch up the holes in a man's heart he refuses to acknowledge. Her withdrawal is a message louder than any word she ever spoke. It says, I will not carry what you refuse to feel. I will not love in your absence. I will not nurture what chooses to die. I will not wait for you to see me while I bleed for your blindness. The masculine, when unaware, often believes that love is ownership, that once a woman gives herself, she will always remain, that she will always be there, waiting, forgiving, softening herself to make him feel whole. But she is not yours. She is not a possession, she is a force, one that visits only those who can honor her presence. When she leaves, you don't just lose her, you lose what you were when she loved you. The man you almost became. The man you glimpsed in her eyes but never had the courage to fully embrace. That is why it hurt so deeply. Because she didn't just love the man you were. She saw the man you could become, and when she withdrew, she took that vision with her. And now you're left with yourself, unmarried, unvalidated, unseen. You're not missing her kisses, you're missing your potential. You're remissing the man who only existed in the presence of a love you didn't know how to receive. Jung reminds us that what is not brought to consciousness returns as fate. Her departure was not fate, it was a reflection of your inability to meet your shadow, to meet her, and most of all, to meet yourself. The only path forward now is not to chase her, not to pine for her return, but to do the one thing your ego has long resisted, to feel. Let the ache break you open. Let it dismantle the structures you've built to avoid your inner truth. Let it rip through the walls of your avoidance and show you everything you've hidden behind achievement, masculinity, detachment. Let it bring you to your knees, not in shame, but in reverence. Because her absence is not your punishment, it is your awakening. And if, through this pain, you begin to see the boy inside you, the parts you discarded to appear invulnerable, the places where fear wore the mask of pride, then you are finally ready to reclaim the feminine within you, ready to become a man of depth, a man who can sit with discomfort, a man who doesn't run when love gets hard, a man who doesn't collapse when a woman shows him her soul. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you are met with that kind of woman, you will not flinch, you will not deflect, deny, detach, you will receive, you will honor, you will rise, because the woman who withdraws her energy does not leave to destroy you, she leaves to resurrect herself. What you do with the wreckage she leaves behind, that's your initiation.
The wreckage left behind by a withdrawn woman is not just emotional debris, it is the remains of a sacred opportunity, a chance you were given to evolve, to meet her where most men never dare to go, into the realms of feeling, intuition, truth. She invited you not only into her heart, but into your own soul, a place many avoid their entire lives. And now, with her gone, the question lingers like smoke in a room that once burned with life. Who are you without her energy, holding space for your becoming? The modern world celebrates the emotionally distant man, stoic, unmoved, unreachable. But this is not real stoicism. The ancient Stoics Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius did not teach numbness. They taught mastery over impulse, not the avoidance of feeling. They taught presence in adversity, not the escape from intimacy. You misunderstood what it meant to be strong. You mistook her need for depth as weakness. You thought love should be light, easy, effortless. But she came into your life to show you otherwise. That real love is a fire. It will burn away everything false. And if you're not ready to be consumed, you will run from the very flame that came to transform you. But the flame is not gone. It now burns within you. Not as love returned, but as the grief of love denied. She was not a lesson. She was a mirror. And if you look into that mirror long enough, you will see not only what you lost, but who you were supposed to become. A man who does not recoil from a woman's emotions, but honors them as truth. A man who doesn't flinch when confronted with depth, who doesn't hide behind logic when intuition calls. A man who can hold both the fire and the storm, without needing to tame it. Because what she needed was not perfection. She needed presence. She needed you to stay with her in the discomfort. Not to fix her, not to solve her, just to witness her in the full range of her being. And when you couldn't, or wouldn't, she did the one thing she had to do to protect her spirit. She withdrew. And now, all the things she once offered freely, her words, her care, her body, her dreams, her softness, are no longer yours to access. They have returned to the place they were always meant to serve. Herself. She is not bitter. She is not broken. She is reclaimed. And that, more than anything, is why it hurts. Because she did not wither in your absence. She flourished. She rose from the silence you left her in, and remembered who she was before she ever met you. And in doing so, she became untouchable to the version of you that could not meet her in her fullness. The boy who needed validation, who ran from emotion, who mistook withdrawal for rejection rather than initiation. This pain you feel is the call to alchemy. You can drown in it, or you can transform through it. If you listen carefully, her absence has a language of its own. It says, become more, grow deeper, learn to hold what you could not hold before, not for her return, but so that you never again abandon a sacred connection, because your ego wasn't ready. One day, you may meet her again, not to rekindle, but to witness. And when you do, she may not look back. She may simply nod, not out of resentment, but from the quiet recognition of two paths that once met, diverged, and became whole on their own. Because her love was never about possession. It was about remembrance. She came into your life to remind you of what you buried. And when she left, it wasn't to wound you. It was to awaken you. If that wound still bleeds, then good. That means your soul is still listening. That means the fire is still burning. Now choose. Will you let that fire destroy you, or will you let it forge you into the man you were always meant to become? And now, here you are, standing in the ruins of who you were when she loved you. This is where most turn away. This is where the ego screams to escape, to numb, to forget. But if you are brave enough, if the ache inside you has not yet turned to bitterness, you will recognize this place for what it is, the sacred forge. Every man who desires to embody depth must pass through this fire. This is the dark night of the soul, the underworld descent. Not into shame, but into truth. Into the unraveling of old patterns. Into the confrontation with the false self you wore like armor. Stoic, indifferent, untouchable. That self dies here. Because the woman you lost was never meant to fill your wounds. She was meant to expose them. And now, without her to distract you from your own disconnection, you face the mirror she once held for you. You see the parts of you that never learned to hold emotion. The child who flinched at intimacy. The man who sought control instead of communion. You see the sabotage, the withdrawal, the pride that kept you separate. And in that moment of stillness, when the distractions fade and all that remains is the truth, you finally see her. Not the fantasy, not the projection, but the real woman. The one who waited, who spoke truth, who asked for presence. The one who brought you closer to the edge of your own becoming than anyone else ever dared. The one you dismissed, not because she lacked worth, but because you lacked readiness. But readiness is a choice. And the fire still burns. Jung taught that the process of individuation, the journey of becoming whole, requires us to embrace the opposites within. The masculine must meet the feminine, not just outside, but within. The anima must be integrated. The heart must be opened. The soul must be heard. And if you dare to answer that call, you will discover something that goes far beyond the woman you lost. You will discover yourself. Not the self the world told you to be. Emotionless, impenetrable, invulnerable. But the man who can hold a woman without needing to control her. The man who can meet her fire without shrinking. The man who doesn't flinch when the feminine rises with her chaos, her longing, her ache for depth. The man who sees that ache and says, asterisk, I see you, I'm here. I will not leave. Asterisk, because that is what she always needed. Not perfection, not performance. Presence. A man who does not just stand beside her, but stands within himself. A man who doesn't need her energy to feel alive, because he has remembered his own. And when you become that man, when the fire has burned away the ego and left only truth, you will not return to her with need, but with gratitude. You will thank her in the silence. You will honor her by the way you now love others, by the way you now love yourself. You will understand, at last, that she was not your undoing. She was your awakening. The feminine in her was a messenger. And when you refused the message, she left, as all sacred messengers must, not to punish, but to preserve what was holy, what could not be wasted, what was meant to be poured only into vessels strong enough to hold the weight of her truth. And now, the most important truth remains. Her withdrawal was not rejection, it was redirection. She did not leave to leave you empty. She left so you could finally become whole. Because no woman, no matter how conscious, how loving, how devoted, can do a man's inner work for him. She can only shine the light, hold the mirror, speak the truth. And if he still chooses blindness, she will walk away. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. She must walk away, or she will begin to forget her own name. So now, in this quiet space where her energy used to live, ask yourself, asterisk, what will I do with the silence? Will I run from it, fill it with noise? Or will I sit in it long enough to hear what it's been trying to teach me all along? Because this silence isn't empty. It is sacred. And if you listen closely, it may just become the very voice of your rebirth. And in that rebirth, slow, painful, sacred, the man who once needed her energy to feel alive becomes something altogether different. He becomes whole, not because he replaced her, not because he numbed the ache, but because he entered it. Because he let the silence undo him. Because he let grief become the chisel that carved out the stone around his heart. Because he allowed the pain to transmute pride into humility, detachment into presence, blindness into vision. You see, this is what she always wanted. Not your perfection, not your obedience, but your truth. The truth of your feeling, your fear, your longing. She never needed you to save her. She needed you to meet her, to stand with her, soul to soul, without shrinking. But that kind of meeting requires a death. The death of the persona, the mask, the idea of manhood that was built on suppression instead of sovereignty. And that death, it feels like failure, until it becomes freedom. Because in shedding all that is false, what emerges is something eternal. The man who does not flinch at depth. The man who does not abandon in conflict. The man who does not view a woman's emotions as chaos to contain, but as truth to witness. He becomes the man who can hold her fire, not extinguish it. Who can receive her wildness, not fear it. Who does not ask her to shrink so he can feel secure, but expands himself so he can hold more. She was never too much. You were simply not yet enough of yourself. But now, forged in her absence, you are becoming the wound. Her withdrawal left behind has become a doorway, a portal, not back to her, but forward into your own fullness. That is what few understand about heartbreak. It is not just loss. It is initiation. The man who has not been broken by a conscious woman has not yet met his edge, because she is the edge. The wild edge of the feminine that says, meet me in truth, or don't meet me at all. And when she walks, she doesn't just walk away from you. She walks toward herself. She returns to the place from which she came, untamed, unapologetic, whole, and you, if you dare to follow not her footsteps, but your own pain, will find yourself reborn, not as a man seeking her again, but as a man who has integrated the very thing she represented. Asterisk, your feminine, your feeling, your vulnerability, your longing, your capacity to connect without fear, without performance, without ego. And when you find that place in yourself, when you stop seeking her outside of you, and begin to embrace the reflection she left inside, that is when you no longer need her to come back. Because you have come home to yourself. That is her gift. She came not to complete you, but to call you forth. To awaken the parts of you buried beneath years of avoidance and expectation. And her departure was not a closing. It was an opening. An invitation to finally, become a man who does not fear the depths. A man who walks into love with his eyes wide open. A man who meets the feminine, not with resistance, but with reverence. And so, to the woman who walked away, thank you. Thank you for not staying where your soul was starving. Thank you for not making yourself small to be held. Thank you for choosing yourself when he could not choose truth. And to the man who sits in the echo of her absence, rise. Not to prove, not to win, not to fix, but to become. Because the wound she left is not your punishment. It is your path. Follow it all the way in. And there in the quiet, in the breaking, in the fire, you will remember what she saw in you all along. And then you will no longer need her to remind you. Because you will be it. You will carry the energy you once chased. You will become the presence you once resisted. You will live as the man you once pretended to be. And when you do, you won't chase her. You will bless her for being the mirror, for being the flame, for being the wound that turned into rebirth.